Thanks, Jacqueline, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's great to see such a beautiful room of people, and it means so much that you guys are all here and made the trip down. Well, with those lovely noises in the background, the lovely animals. Well, I'm so thrilled to be moderating the panel tonight. My name is Kayla Schreibstein. I had the privilege, as Jacqueline mentioned, of being a part of the very first cohort of Birthright Storytellers back in August, alongside many incredible people, including Nicole to my left. But I want to back up a little because my relationship with Israel really has two chapters, and I think that's really important in how we're going to frame the conversation tonight. So first time I did Birthright was a 10-day trip when I graduated college in 2018. I was 22 years old. So, I was excited to go back to Israel. I'd been once with my family. I was, ready to party, live it up with the Israelis, see what life was like in Tel Aviv, and that's, exactly what I did. I came back to the United States, moved to New York City to start my career in tech sales, which I'm still doing today. So that was, one experience. But fast forward to this past summer when I went back to Storytellers, back to Israel at the age of 29. Same country, but completely different experience because I was a completely different woman. When I went to Israel this past summer, I had started a platform that I call Friends of Kayla. It's a podcast centered around Jewish identity and culture that grew because of my own experience after October 7th. When I landed my time on the cohort this summer, I had about 4,000 followers, and I have 10,000 followers today, which is really exciting, as of this morning, actually, which is awesome. So that still doesn't feel real. But Friends of Kayla is a podcast and a platform that I started a year and a half ago. I grew up in a very reformed household. I never felt deeply connected to my Judaism. I used to describe myself as Jew-ish, emphasis on the ish. I was often the token Jew on my sports teams and in my sorority pledge class, really just always trying to fit in rather than stand out. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I truly began to reconnect. And then, October 7th happened. And like many of us, I was shocked and heartbroken, not just by the events themselves, but by the world's reaction and by the silence of people that I once called my best friends and even sisters to me. I lost some of the closest friendships that I had. Two girls who actually are Lebanese Muslim. We were best friends for a decade. Thought they would be my future bridesmaids. And unfortunately, that won't be the case. But that pain really lit a fire within me, and it pushed me to speak up and really just be proud and stand tall in who I am as a Jew, because that was something I was candidly embarrassed. And it's sad to admit that, but I really rejected my identity as a Jewish woman throughout my entire life. So Friends of Kayla has become what it is today, which is a platform to highlight what it means to be Jewish and proud through honest conversations and stories with influential Jews like people. We have Jared Firestone actually in the audience, who was on Team Israel for the bobsled in the Winter Olympics. So shout out to Jared. He was one of my guests on the podcast recently. So it's been really an honor and privilege to be a voice for the community and interviewing and showcasing so many stories and really bringing a positive narrative to the hate that we see online. So with that, I want to introduce our two amazing panelists tonight. First and foremost, we have Nicole Van Dyen. Nicole has built a community of over 1 million people around women's holistic health. She's helping women understand their bodies, their cycles, their well-being. As I mentioned previously, she went on Birthright Storytellers with me this summer, and what she did with that experience, bringing her audience into something deeply personal and Jewish, is exactly why she's here tonight. So thank you, Nicole, for being here. We also have Jeremy Abramson, who is proof that the impact of going to Israel doesn't start and end with Birthright, because he actually has not yet been on a Birthright trip, but ended up going to Israel recently, later on in life, really carved his own path. Jeremy has over 2 million people that follow him for his take on wellness, entrepreneurship, and how to build real community, and he's made quite an impact on the Miami Jewish scene in Miami, and he's influencing young Jews in ways that matter. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. This is amazing.
Is there anything that I missed about your introductions that you guys would like to shed some color on?
That was a pretty good introduction. I'm sure we're going to get into everything.
Yes, Jeremy, how about you?
I'm ready for it. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll be diving deep.
Yes. So I want to start with Nicole. So you went on Storytellers specifically. Before you arrived, what was your relationship to Israel and specifically the scope of work that you do, which I would love for you to share a little bit more on.
Of course. So again, thank you all for coming. So I guess my story started with Birthright. Back in 2018, I went on my first Birthright trip with my sister, and it was my first connection to Israel. I grew up Jewish, Sephardic, traditional, and I never had a strong connection with Israel. And then went on Birthright, obviously ended up extending my trip 3 separate times and stayed for an extra month, like a lot of us do. But then past that, it wasn't much of a connection. My best friend is Israeli, and that's of course a connection, but it wasn't so significant. I, never really wore my Jewish star. I never really put it out there that I was Jewish. And I think that has a lot to do with where I am today. Because in the 2 years prior to October 7th, I had made a conscious decision that I wanted to stop hesitating before I said I was Jewish. Because it came about that every time I would say that I was Jewish, someone would ask me about, oh, how do you feel about Israel-Palestine? And I was like, I don't have any connection. Like, I'm just Jewish. Which I think also speaks to the testament of is anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, and back and forth. But fast forward, it was, October 2023, and I was living in Spain by myself. I didn't have much of a community there, definitely not a Jewish community. I moved to Spain to work on a beach and, do the business that I was working on for the previous couple of years. That, Baruch Hashem, I had gained a pretty big following from. And then October 7th happened. And I remember sitting on my couch, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I start scrolling. And like I said, my best friend is Israeli. He's a DJ. Of course, he's also in tech and everything else, but he's a DJ. And I saw something about Nova, and my heart dropped. It's like, what is happening? I ended up messaging him, and clearly I distinctly remember, I said I had seen some things online, but I don't really trust the media, especially when it comes to Israel. But what's going on? And he said, whatever you've seen, it's so much worse. And from that moment is the moment that I knew life had changed. And I was isolated in Spain by myself. I saw friends, family, the Jewish community getting together, volunteering, supporting, doing anything that they could to help out in any way that they could. And here I was feeling absolutely helpless. So I was like, okay, Hashem gave me this platform. At the time, it was, I think, 207,000 on Instagram and 700, 800,000 on TikTok. And I was like, if this is the only thing that I can do, let me do it. And I was naive. I built a platform around menstrual health, this topic that is very progressive. It's very, not spoken about much, but, the women need it. But I was naive to the effect of course, people are going to care. You don't go into a music festival and kidnap and murder people and people don't care. I'd also been at a music festival in Germany 2 weeks prior to that, which was an interesting thing of here I am being Jewish in Germany and walking freely. And, 2 weeks later, October 7th happened. And when I started speaking out online, I was quick to see how bad the anti-Semitism was. And from there, it was just I just wanted to do as much as I possibly could. And then in comes Birthright again. I wanted to do more. And so I ended up in December of 2023 going on an Onward Birthright volunteer trip, which was the most meaningful, transformative experience of my life thus far. And it really showed me how important it was to show up as a Jew, especially in the online space, especially, like Jacqueline was mentioning, in spaces that aren't exclusively Jewish. And then, of course, I went on Storytellers, a very happenstance kind of thing as well. It was 2 weeks before I ended up finding out about it and joining in. And it really solidified the effect of how important it is to proudly show up as a Jew, especially in online spaces where you have influence. People are watching. And whether or not it's, out there, like Jeremy is with wrapping Tefillin, or if it's as simple as just wearing a Magen David. It's important to show up as being a Jew.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so unique about both of you being on here tonight is like you guys didn't build your businesses or your platforms around anything surrounding Judaism, and how you have managed to incorporate that into your messaging today and into your platforms. It can be really scary and daunting, and people are afraid to lose business, to lose work for speaking up about Israel. I mean, it's something I'm personally going through. Like I work, in a tech day job, luckily at an Israeli company, but I'm currently looking to shift my career, and I have this platform, right, Friends of Kayla, where I'm an outspoken Zionist. People can look that up, and you could potentially lose a job or like not get hired because of what we're saying online. But in your guys' cases, you've been really successful. So Jeremy, I want to go to you as someone that wasn't on the Storytellers program, or maybe you haven't done a birthright trip quite yet, but you managed to go to Israel and you totally changed your content, your strategy, and your business. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you guys for hosting such a beautiful space. Really appreciate you. So I grew up in California. I was pretty disconnected from Judaism. My parents did their best to instill the values in my brother and I. Went to a Jewish day school till 5th grade, and then went to public school. And the type of guy I am, I'm a Virgo, but I went against my Virgo energy and I missed all of the deadlines for college applications in high school. And my dad's like, yo, what do you think about going to Israel for a year? And I'm like, Israel? He's like, there's this sports program. You actually get to play sports and coach kids sports. I was like, let's do it. So I went on this Young Judea year course for 9 months. It was absolutely incredible. I was 18 at the time. But after that, I was completely disconnected. Went to university and never really had like a Jewish figure in my life that inspired me. And fast forward, 2014, 2015, I moved to Miami. I get into personal training and health, and I pursue that path. And Judaism was always something I was proud of, but it was never like a significant part of my identity. And that all shifted really fast. So it shifted a couple weeks before October 7th. I was going through a dark period in my life, and I was just looking for answers. And I happened to have like a deep meditation experience and saw Hashem come in front of me and just be like, where have you been? Been waiting for you. So a couple days later, I went to a Chabad Shabbat dinner in Miami Beach. Shout out Chabad, by the way. Absolutely love. Amazing. And I just felt so much love. I was like, wow, our community is incredible. Like, I want to reconnect to this energy. And I remember I was at Soho House in Miami Beach. Any Soho members here? No one? That's awkward. If you guys want, you guys can be my guest. Anyways, I remember very distinctly, I was with a couple of my best friends, 8th floor pool, Sunday afternoon, we're vibing. And then my boy's like, yo, you hear what's going on in Israel? And I was like, no, it's probably just like a normal terrorist attack, like happens every week. I was like, this is way bigger. And I remember going back home right after that. And that night when I went to bed, I woke up and I just saw all of the justification for this. Like the October 7th, as tragic as it was, wasn't so shocking, right? We know what these people are. It was the worldwide response justifying the slaughter of 1,200 Jews. And that really woke up this fire inside of me. And I remember for about a week straight, I was waking up 3 or 4 a.m. And it was basically like the voice of God in my ear. What are you going to do about it? At the time, I had maybe like 1.2 million followers on TikTok, a couple 100,000 on Instagram. It was like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And I was like, I don't really know so much about the history of the situation. I don't really feel well equipped to speak about like the politics and like the history. It's so complex. So I was waking up early in the morning and just like researching and reading, and I was like posting on my story. And like when I had the confidence to start speaking up, I just started sharing on Instagram, and it was pretty incredible what happened. Like within a span of 2 weeks, I think I lost about 28 to 30,000 followers. And in that process though, it was so beautiful to see the people that entered my life. And it was just a really powerful reminder of like aligning to the truth. Because at the end of the day, I think this is so much bigger than like Israel and Judaism, this is like Western values. This is civilization. This is freedom. This is truth that we're standing on. So I just felt an obligation to really be a voice. You know, we're 0.2% of the population globally. If we're blessed enough to have a platform, I feel like we have an obligation to use it and really be a voice for our people and be a light to all nations. So I don't even think I answered your original question about going to Israel.
No, this is good.
I don't want to take up too much time. I can quickly touch on it, or we can move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. No, I think that was a great place to start, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jeremy, because I think it leads to this notion of like, you know, for people like yourselves that were established and had that hundreds of thousands of followers, it's really scary to be outspoken on social media and that fear of loss. But like you had mentioned, it brought you closer to who you are as your authentic self. And I think that's something like I'm personally going through today, is like the woman I am today is not who I was just a few years ago, but like living in your truth is freeing. And it's a beautiful thing to feel. And, you know, we do have an obligation as Jews, I think, to be a voice if we have the ability to do so. But I think what also a lot of us struggle with, and what's so great about Birthright, is the ability to actually have access to amazing leaders and influential people in the space who can help us and teach us things that like maybe we weren't so educated on. So Nicole, I want to go back to you when thinking about Storytellers and the program this summer. Can you maybe like talk through a moment that or share more about like an experience you had on the trip, or like a session we went through that actually impacted you and influenced some of the content that you started making after the trip?
It's hard to think about because there are so many moments. And honestly, there's also so many moments in between. We had incredible workshops. You know, we met with the marketing director of Wix. We met with one of the top podcasters in Israel. And they gave so much value and insight and really helped us like understand what it is to be a storyteller with the Jewish community, but also like within our own rights. But to be honest with you, it was all of the moments in between. Mm-hmm. It was the quiet moments. It was the bus rides that we were able to, you know, sit with each other and understand like how it impacted one another. I think especially in the online space, it can be very, very lonely. You know, you're getting, at the time I was getting like hundreds of messages of anti-Semitism and, you know, I had my family telling me to stop, you know, this is getting in the way of your business. It's also affecting your mental health. Like, just stop talking about Israel for a little bit. And I was like, I can't. It was like a deep inside of me that I needed to use this platform that I had. And over everything, I think the Birthright Storytellers trip gave me the reinvigorated confidence to continue to speak up, to also connect with others that were facing similar things, that they also were afraid to talk and afraid of how it was going to get in the way of their businesses, especially because it is so important to be outside of the echo chamber and still do our own business and our own things, and then also how we're going to integrate Israel and being Jewish into that. So it was really insightful. Of course, all of the facilitators and the programs that we did, but the people that were on the trip with us is, I think, what really transformed my life. I mean, now I'm from Toronto. I'm here in Miami doing a Birthright thing. Like, it's about the connections that you feel. And when you start to feel connected to a community, you have more of a power and an ability to continue doing what you feel is necessary for you to do.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I personally feel like, you know, as a 22-year-old on Birthright versus a 29, 30-year-old, like being so sure of who I am at this stage of my life, it's very different going to Israel and having this experience in your late 20s, early 30s, when you're just more of a transformed human. Yeah, I don't know if you guys feel that way, but I'm like, it was all the more impactful because I came back from this trip and like felt that much more connected to this community. I mean, Nicole, like you said, we're sitting here today. This is now the second panel that I've moderated for Storytellers. So like having this true community of people that feel the exact same commitment and just love for our people, love for Israel that we do, like it's really just so special. And of course, like going on Birthright is so transformative in your earlier years, but I think it's almost more impactful when you're this age? Like, what do you guys think?
1,000.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think like you said at the very beginning, going on Birthright when you're young, it's like, this is a fun trip to go on. And I think also pre-October 7th, it was a different mentality. It was like, this is fun to do because we're with our friends, we're making new friends, we're in a new place. Like, and yes, it builds that connection to Israel that you can never let go of. But definitely coming in as an older person, the connections that you make and the connection you feel to the land is so much more deep and ingrained, and I think it's beautiful. You want to speak on it?
Yeah, Jeremy, I have a question from you just around like your audience and just your business as a whole. You mentioned, you obviously lost 20 to 30,000 followers, but gained so much more from that. What kind of response did you get from people that had been following you for years, and how did that impact your business, and how did you shift your strategy from there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm very grateful that there's something inside my DNA from my ancestors that like, I can't not speak the truth. So for me, like doing something that's out of alignment that will manifest in more money or more business would just feel so inauthentic to me. And I think at the end of the day, that's what makes the Jewish people so unique and special, is that we are willing to do uncomfortable things, and we're willing to overcome so much adversity, and we're willing to be disliked. And at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest addictions most humans have is seeking approval from other people. So it was a great lesson for me in just detaching from that, detaching from being liked, detaching from being understood, and really being so grounded and confident in my truth. And when you go to Israel, like all of us have been, like you witness the truth. I mean, there's mosques in the center of Tel Aviv. You see all of the Christian Nigerians and Ethiopians who have escaped their countries to have a peaceful home in Israel. And I don't think you really get to witness that truth until you actually experience that. But in terms of business, I feel like I've just created such an amazing community, and people have been inspired by, I think someone said it earlier, the word was unapologetic. Did someone say that word here today? Or am I crazy? Okay, I'm gonna say it. Being unapologetic about our Judaism, about our identity, I think is such a beautiful thing, and it's always going to attract people that are vibrating and operating at that same energy. And at the end of the day, there's a book called like the 5 biggest regrets of the dead, right, on their deathbed by Bronnie Ware. The number one regret is I wish I wouldn't have lived my life based on other people's opinions. It's like we have a mission and we have an obligation to speak the truth. And the business stuff has really taken some time to manifest. I pretty much put my for-profit on hold and like dedicated all of my time and energy to things that were actually just costing me money. Whether it was live events, whether it was flying to Israel and doing these different healing ceremonies for people, soldiers that had PTSD and stuff like that. But I knew at the end of the day, as long as I stay in alignment with God's plan, good things will happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, to just speak on the, I also, as soon as October 10th, I had lost I think about 10,000 followers on Instagram alone. And of course it was harsh, I've spent the last 5 years building this business and this platform, and it was wild to see how deep those numbers ran down. And also to your point with talking about the friends that you had lost, I had, friends of 15 years that saw that I was getting death threats online, didn't reach out to me. And it was a loss. It felt like a very big loss of a lot of things. It was a loss of people closest to me. It was a loss of this community that I felt that I built. It was a loss of my sense of safety, of so many different things. But one thing that I really recognized with that is that all of that loss made way for so many better things to come into my life. I lost many, many friends. And to think about the friends and the community that I've built within the last 3 years is exponential. And, you know, it's genuine people that have been coming into my life. And, you know, after I had lost all of those followers, about 2 weeks later, I started to see the gain. And it was Jews and Israelis and allies that were like, you know what, I haven't seen other people in your field speaking about this. And it's really amazing to know that this is a safe space for me. Because like in any community that we thought we were a part of, it turned out that we weren't really part of because we were Jewish. And then to know that you can be that safe space for somebody, to like know that any loss is actually a gain because you're getting more space to welcome better people and people that align with you in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. I think people want to feel connected to something. And whenever I see like a celebrity that I didn't know was Jewish, right, you're automatically like, oh my gosh, you're like Mila Kunis, she's Jewish. Like, that's so cool. So obviously, Nicole, you're not a A-list celebrity, unfortunately. One day. Not yet.
We got this shit. After this podcast,
it's great online to know that there are people like you, for young girls even, to connect to, right? And, you know, I'm sure I get interesting messages. I actually got a message today from someone on TikTok. I recently interviewed an ally, so he's Christian, and he grew up a Zionist in Colombia. He's Colombian. And went to college in the United States, became an anti-Zionist fully, and was the president of SJP, had an opportunity to go to Israel through the student government that he was in, and was like, yeah, let's go. I want to see the apartheid, like, let's go to Israel. Goes to Israel immediately, like, realizes that, you know, Jews aren't all white. Oh my God, there's Jews from Yemen, there's Jews from Ethiopia. His whole perspective changes, and now he is the VP of Advocacy and Strategy at Passages Israel, bringing Christian youth to Israel. He's worked for Stand With Us. So anyway, we had a very interesting interview, and I posted this clip about how he went to Israel an anti-Zionist and came back a Zionist. And I've gotten some really interesting messages from a lot of non-Jewish people saying like, hey, you know, this really spoke to me. I really want to visit Israel. Like, do you know of programs that I can go on? Things of that nature. So it's really like bringing an impact out here is all I want to say, is like having a platform, like you're reaching these people that like are there for you when you didn't realize it. Like, I think as Jews, we feel so alone right now, but there are people that care. And the negativity, I think it's easy for that to take up all the noise, but there's a lot of good out there. So I want to ask you guys, like, what are some messages that you might be getting, whether that's Jews or non-Jews, that are bringing you, you know, more positivity right now? I'm sure, Jeremy, you get a lot because you're doing a ton of community building right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like, yeah, the messages have been pretty brutal, but, you know, you realize like most of these people who are keyboard warriors are like in such dark places. Like they're in their mom's basement, like hiding behind some username, Johnny Boy 64, and like they're talking all of this darkness to a stranger that they've never met. So like, I really do my best to honestly just have compassion for the place that they're at in their life and not allow it to penetrate my soul. You know, for sure at first, like, yeah, just any message you could imagine, I definitely received it. But I think it's really important, and these last 2.5 years, there's been such a big focus on combating anti-Semitism. And I feel like so much of our time and energy has been spent debunking all of these lies, like the apartheid, the genocide, right? When in reality, we should be actually getting on offense. You know, for any sports fan here, you know the expression, the best defense is a great offense. We don't need to spend our time debunking all these myths. We need to get on offense, and this is what I call pro-Semitism. Really doing everything in our ability to shine our unique light. So each one of us has a unique gift to share with our families, with our communities, with the Jewish people as a whole. So it's really important to lean into that. So it's like saying the Modeh Ani every morning, right? Wrapping Tefillin if you're a man, if you're a woman, lighting the Shabbat candles. Like these little practices and rituals actually make a huge impact. And I think that's really where we need to shift the focus as Jews, is not focusing on all of the people, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons. We know what they are. It's not going to stop. Anti-Semitism isn't going anywhere. And the moment that we actually like play their game and give them attention, that's when we actually strip our power away. So I think it's so important to just silence all of the noise. That's what a majority of it is. It's just noise. Like there's a couple messages where people like did research on my parents and they're like, we know your mom's from Manchester, England, and we know what school she went to. I'm like, yo, I don't even know what school my mom went to. So that was a little scary, but like at the end of the day, we just need to keep being the best version of ourselves every day and as a community. And that's what makes the Jewish people so special. Like, let's go. Like we don't stop.
I forget what the original question was, but I can also just vibe off of what Jeremy just said.
Yeah, vibe off that.
Yeah, I think, like to your point, I think also, and especially right at the beginning, the few months after October 7th, where I was like very active and spent 15 hours a day being a keyboard warrior, I would try to approach it with compassion. And my whole understanding throughout my life, when I ever had any sort of anti-Semitic interaction, was you've probably never met a Jew. Like we're such a tiny population. There was a statistic that 75% of the world's population has never even met a Jew. You know, how they have all of these ideas about us, etc., but we have the ability to show who we are. And, you know, I'm within my own platform, I'm not as vocal. It's not my main focus, but I try to infuse small things because if you realize, if you know one of these anti-Semitic people or ignorant people come into my space and they get value from me, they get help from me, and then they see that I'm wearing a star, and they're like, oh, maybe all Jews aren't that bad, you know? Maybe there's something here that I need to think about, that all of these biases that I've had throughout my life might not be true. And that's the thing when, especially in the online space, when we have these abilities to have a broad reach. And honestly, yes, we have millions of followers and whatever it is, but even the smaller groups, smaller things in your community, how are you showing up as a Jewish person and interacting with other people? Because we, unfortunately, or fortunately, we are a representation, right? So if we have the ability to be strong within ourselves, to be proud of who we are, to show up authentically and proudly, then the world will have like no other option. And even if it is 1, 2, 3 people, that's still, you know, 3 whole worlds that you can change and impact.
That was beautiful, Nicole. Thank you. I think that is a great place to conclude tonight's panel, but I do want to open it up to you all for any questions that you might have for Nicole, for Jeremy, for myself, or Jacqueline. So we can go around with the microphone if you guys have any questions. Yes.
Jeremy, can you give an example of things that you post?
By the way, I love your blazer.
And the shoes.
Yeah, this whole vibe right now, I'm a huge fan. This is pro-Semitism, by the way. This is it. Give it up, give it up. What's your name? Wow. Debbie, absolutely incredible. Wow. So before October 7th, a majority of my content was all about holistic health, mental health, a lot of stuff to educate and empower people to break free from like big pharma and stuff like that, to really take ownership of their health and their lives. And then obviously a lot of things shifted. So I've gone through different ranges, different periods where it's like more political and, you know, obviously like around Trump stuff, like more political. When I'm in Israel, like it's hard not to talk about what's going on in Israel. Now I've actually returned back to a lot of my, I'm getting back to more of my original content, like Kabbalah, spirituality, really just equipping people with the tools to just take ownership of their lives. Because I think one of the best things that we can do individually, like I mentioned as Jews, is like really feel that connection to God in whatever way that means. So I think for a lot, at least for me, and I think some other people too, there's been a disconnect, right? I think teachers of Judaism have done a poor job of infusing spirituality into Judaism, really explaining the depth of some of our rituals, making it cool. making it something that like a 17 or 18-year-old kid is like excited to learn about. So I think I want to be the person that I wish I had when I was that age, right? And teach some of those lessons and do it in a way that's authentic and fun. So you'll see when you get there. I just had a podcast with like a very well-known Rabbi Manis Friedman in New York. I have like the biggest divorce attorney on my podcast next week, like really interesting people from all walks of life. What's that?
You got him on.
James Sexton, yeah, great guy. Tomorrow I have like the podcast is with Madonna's Kabbalah teacher, Eitan Yardeni, amazing guy. So yeah, just kind of putting out those messages.
He also has something called Tefillin Gang, where he wraps Tefillin with guys around Miami Beach. So that's really been fun to see too.
I've wrapped Tefillin with over 800 guys now. I never did it myself before October 7th. And we just actually we did our first giveaway. We gave away 5 Tefillin to people in Miami. And now they're wrapping every day. And yeah, we're actually hosting a big Shabbat dinner. Do you guys have Shabbat plans this Friday? Seriously, 150 people.
Jeremy and I are hosting.
Miami Beach.
Miami
Actually, there's
Beach.
probably going to be like 180 people. If you guys don't have Shabbat plans, it's going to be absolutely incredible. It's called Soulful Shabbat.
And Friends of Kayla Shabbat.
It's going to be very, very special. Yeah.
And then, my question is for you guys and also for the organizers. I would love if you could share how we can find you and follow you online.
Awesome.
Yes, great question. My Instagram is Friends of Kayla. Jeremy?
Jeremy Awakens.
Mine is Nicole.Bendayan.
And we'll make sure that as part of our follow-up, we'll put all their accounts on the email so they can
Nicole for mental health needs.
lost me.
Honestly, it's very helpful even if you have there's women around you. It is very helpful. I teach all
Super.
about the menstrual cycle and how it impacts women.
Oh, I already follow you. I was
Oh, perfect. There we go.
I love that.